Hello, welcome to the second part of our Hypnos tutorial series. We will be going over Hypnos sleep in this video. And before we dive into the Adreno code, I wanted to give a little live demonstration of what a successful Hypnos sleep looks like. So as you can see right now, the Feather MO and the Hypnos board are turned on with their LEDs indicating that, and they're hooked up to the sensor. And now I'm gonna run my code to make it go to sleep. So now I ran it, and you can see it turned off. It's in sleep mode, and in a few seconds it should turn back on. And there we go. That is the live demonstration of your SD sleep. Um, And yeah, if you wire your sensor correctly, your code looks good. This is what it should look like.
Alrighty, this is the Adreno code for the Hypnos board. Again, you can find this on the Loom examples folder on the GitHub, and then you can navigate over to the Hypnos folder and find the Hypnos SD for this tutorial. Also, you want to do the same thing for the example code of the sensor that you're using in the Loom GitHub. So make sure you pull that up. And pretty much what we're going to be doing here is we're just going to be combining both of these example codes into one. But before we look into Adreno, I want to go over the Hypnos code. It should all look pretty familiar to you as you've worked with example code from Loom in the past. So here, as you can see, we're creating a manager object, and we're creating the Loom Hypnos object. One important thing here to note is that you want to make sure you're putting in the right version number in your Adreno code. If you're using a 3.3 Hypnos board, you want to make sure you're using a Hypnos version 3.3. If you do not have the right versions on your code, none of the code will work, and this is crucial. So make sure you're using the right version number. Then here in the setup, you're going to see it's all pretty familiar. We're going to have the manager begin serial, which is preparing the serial monitor. And this function right here, the Hypnos enable, is just enabling the Hypnos power rails, which are connected to the Feather MO board so that they can communicate within each other. Then here we have some test code that is just putting dummy data into the SD card to make sure everything is being logged properly. And then again, we've seen this before, the manager display data is going to display onto the serial monitor. And then finally, it's going to log it onto the SD card. And then here in the loop, this is where you're going to put most of your code in. So yeah, make sure you have the right version number when you're writing up your code. This is crucial. Okay, so onto the Adreno code. As you can see here, I've combined my accelerometer example code with the Hypnos code. And here you can see that I've called the right libraries, Loom Manager, the sensor library that I'm using, which is the accelerometer in my case, and then here the Hypnos library. Make sure you're calling these unless your code will not work. So here I have the sensor object name, and then I have the Hypnos object right here being declared with the right version number. And then in the setup, I put Hypnos enable. I've been told that you want to do this as the first thing in your setup, unless, and if you don't do this, you might run into problems. So make sure that you're doing the Hypnos enable before you begin the serial interface and initialize the manager. And then in the loop, again, they should look really familiar. You're managing, the manager is just going to measure the sensor from the data, and then it's going to package it into the JSON file, and then it's going to display it onto the serial monitor. And then here, this is some code that I just added when I was testing my sensor. And then finally, it's going to log it to the SD card and then repeat this in 5 seconds. Okay, so for the serial monitor, this is what it should look. It should look relatively familiar. You're going to have your manager name right here, the instance. You can also have the packet number, and then you're going to have your sensor data. When I was going through this tutorial, this part right here, the data, the sensor's data, it wasn't showing up on my serial monitor. And what had happened there was that I did not set up my my sensor code properly. I had an incorrect argument in the wrong place here, and that screwed up my code. So make sure that your code is correct with your sensor, and that that the wiring is correct. If you have not done that properly, you're going to run into issues where the Hypnos board is going to work fine, but you're not going to collect any data. So um, your Excel file is going to just pretty much be blank with no relevant information. So as you can see here, here's the data from the sensor name, and then the timestamp that this occurred at. Also, at the beginning, you're going to receive some messages. Since this has been running for a long time, I don't think I can access those messages, but pretty much it's going to tell you if the sensor's been initialized, if the SD card has been initialized, and any errors that have made occurred while you're booting up your Hypnos board. So the serial monitor will let you know if you've done everything correctly. I think you're going to get like a success message. And then here, I don't have an SD card hooked up into the Hypnos board, so that's why I'm getting this message. It's not, I can't write anything to an SD card because it's not in the Hypnos board. All right, so let's look at the Excel file. So here it looks relatively similar to the serial monitor data. It's just organized now into a nice little spreadsheet. As you can see here, no sensor data was being collected. This is the Excel file that I used when I had the incorrect code. So that's why I was getting no values for my sensor data. But if you've done everything correctly, you're going to have a nice little formatted rows and columns of your sensor data. And yeah, so that's pretty much it with the Hypnos tutorial. Again, it's pretty similar to what you've done in the past. It's just now adding a Hypnos board and adding Hypnos code into your sensors code. A few things I want to reiterate: make sure that your sensors code and wiring is correct, unless you're because you're gonna run into this problem right here where your Hypnos setup is working fine, but you're not getting any data from the sensor. So make sure that you're familiar and comfortable with setting up sensors and working with Loom code. And then also, when you're programming, make sure that you include the correct version of your Hypnos board, unless none of this will work. And congrats, you've finished this tutorial. Now you can move on to the Hypnos sleep video.